Let me just give you a bit of an update on where we stand. It appears that the case is largely a case in which will be proven, to the extent it can be proven, by tape recordings and audio tapes. Ismail and Josh Pavel, who then worked for my office, did review some of those tapes, and we will be hopefully getting all of those tapes at least a week before the trial. So we'll be able to review them ourselves in some greater detail. Right now they're in the district attorney's office, and it's a little bit cumbersome to review all of them in that setting.
With the Dutchess County District Attorney?
Well, the Dutchess County has taken the file because it was taken from the Ulster County District Attorney, so they have all the materials in Poughkeepsie at this point. The judge has indicated that, as you heard, we'll have jury selection probably taking 2 days on the 2nd and 3rd. I think those are what are the dates? The 2nd and 3rd of November. Then we'll start the trial likely with testimony on that Friday. Go Monday, then we'll have Election Day. Go Wednesday and Thursday, then we'll have Veterans Day, whatever exactly it is. So what I am suggesting is that to the extent the community wants to participate and come, realizing that it'll probably be about 10 or 12 or 14 trial days, and people can't come likely every day, that folks organize so that some group of people can be here each day. That would be helpful, I think, to the process. In terms of the jury, there'll be a process by which jurors are pre-screened, meaning that anybody who's been exposed to the case, who knows about the case, who knows any of the parties, will be spoken with privately, so whatever they have to say doesn't taint one way or the other the entire jury pool. And those people will, if they have strong opinions, whatever their opinions are, they'll be likely excluded from the jury. So you're going to end up with jurors, hopefully, even though it sounds somewhat paradoxical, who have no idea what this is about. And their job will simply be to come here and decide based on the evidence they hear whether the people have proven beyond a reasonable doubt the charges against Mr. Shabazz. That's the way it works. The only other thing I'll say to you is that to the extent that what we're doing is using what's called an entrapment defense, an entrapment defense brings into play, in a certain sense, a person's whole life history. And whether they have a proclivity to engage in criminality generally, or whether they have a proclivity to engage in this particular kind of criminality, selling weapons, would have engaged in that without the active efforts of the government. And that's, in essence, in summary, what an entrapment defense is. So it may be that those coming to the trial hear all sorts of things about Ismail, most of which I'll argue to the jury have nothing to do with establishing any proclivity to sell guns. So those are called bad acts. Whether they are true or not true, or whatever the status of them is, we'll be debating them at the trial when we find out a little bit more about what they intend to try to introduce. So in a normal criminal trial where you don't have an entrapment defense, you're really not allowed to get into a lot of stuff about a defendant that might be viewed otherwise as prejudicial, because you're introducing everything in the kitchen sink. The judge will say, well, you can't do that. But where you have an entrapment defense, it does open the door for them to try to introduce what are called bad acts. So that's a trade-off. And until we decide otherwise, we are going to have a jury trial until and unless, if Ismail decides he does not want to have a jury trial, he can consent to a trial only with the judge. We'll talk about that further privately. Okay? Does anybody have questions? Some of you are not familiar to me by sight, which doesn't mean you haven't been here. It just means I didn't see you, if you are. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them.
So it seems like there are many hours of these tapes.
Many.
And they have access because it's sitting in there, but you're only going to have a very limited.
Well, we can go there whenever we want. I'm sure we'll be going there more frequently. It's just that we're somewhat inhibited to have conversations in someone else's office when you don't know the security, etc.
Right. Okay.
So there is a disadvantage, but it's not that stark.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have anything, Mr. Rubin?
Was the prosecutor here today?
Yes, he was.
Robert Knapp?
Yes, he was. That was him with the woman, Sarah Thompson, I think her name is, sitting to our right. We got the chair for.
What is his name? Robert
Knapp.
Knapp.
K-N-A-P-P.
And the judge is from Troy, and his name is
McNally.
Right.
Judge McNally.
Yes, Judge McNally.
From Troy.
Who committed the entrapment? Federal agents?
Yes.
Why isn't this in federal court?
They declined to prosecute.
Because
We
Lack
don't
of
get
evidence?
well. We don't get to know that. Whether it's lack of evidence or a lack of priority, they may feel that it's not important enough. I mean, I can't though. Just speculating, which really we shouldn't do. I don't know why they didn't prosecute it. We know they didn't prosecute it. That's what we do know. We know that in the light of their declination of prosecution, however it happened, it came to the state level and county level where they decided to prosecute. So
Only after the federal government declined?
that's correct. That sequence of events is clear.
So you entered an omnibus motion.
Well, the judge denied the motion.
Completely?
Yes.
All
He said we
parts?
could have a hearing on Sandoval if we wanted one, but given the entrapment defense, having a hearing on Sandoval doesn't make a whole lot of sense because they're going to be allowed to, as we are, to talk about Ismail's background in a way that's relevant to whether or not he was entrapped.
And can you say what Sandoval is?
Yes. Sandoval's a hearing at which the judge decides whether bad acts may be used or not used, bad acts, prior crimes, etc. In summary. And as I said earlier, in many cases that's highly relevant because you're trying to keep from the jury things that might be prejudicial with regard to that charge. When you're dealing with an entrapment defense, though, as your question suggested, has less bearing. Because you're opening a person's background and saying, well, in light of his background, without that entrapment, it wouldn't have happened. Now, he's, of course, telling the judge, and I think it's fair to say, that there's no evidence of any entrapment. That all of this is, voluntary, and I mean, that's what we're going to be debating in that 2.5 or 3 week period. What happened? Who said what to whom? How did it come about that these events were committed? And that's what the trial is going to be about in some large measure. It's not so much a debate of what exactly happened. It's more of a debate of why it happened, what the intentions and motivations were. Correct? All right?
Right. One more question.
Sure.
So for jury selection, do you want people there for that?
I believe it's important that for this reason, and I'm not saying this to suggest anybody's paranoid, quite the contrary. Where you have a case with this amount of interest and a sort of political cast to it, I think it's important that people see what's going on at every stage of the case. So that, and jury selection is an important part of a case, a very important part of a case, so that people don't feel, well, I wasn't there, this must have happened then, or this rumor, that you have enough eyes and ears that you yourselves can converse knowingly and as witnesses to what happens. And that's really why I suggest people come. I mean, it may be rather chaotic, there may be a lot of people, but I think it's better for it to be that way than, again, folks not to know and then be wondering and taking my word for it or anyone's word for it. See for yourself. Okay?
Great.
Question.
I'm sorry, one last question. Can you get us some kind of a schedule as soon as possible of when we should be trying to get people there and what times? And
Well, that's why I'm
things?
outlining it today. I'll get it to you in writing. But basically, the next court appearance is going to be November 2nd.
What time?
That is a Wednesday at 9:30.
9:30 a.m.
And then we'll be going on every weekday, other than holidays, from that day forward.
At
Until we
9:30.
end. 9:30 here.
Every day.
Every day.
Until it's done.
Until it's done.
All right, great.
If there are viewers out in the community who would like to get more informed on this issue, are there sources that you can point to that would better educate them?
Yeah, I'm going to point to two of them. I'm pointing right now.
Hi.
Where are you?
I'm right here.
My
And-
suggestion is that in the week or 2 weeks before the trial starts, to go to the gentleman's question as well. Sorry, I don't know your name. But in that time period, it may be opportune to have a community meeting and, invite people of your acquaintance to come who want to know or might want to know more about the case. We have had some meetings and discussions, fundraising, whatever it may be. And whatever it is, I'm not talking about the fundraising part of it, just in terms of information flow, I think that would be fine.
Yeah. One thing that can be helpful is on the fundraising page, which is www.gofundme.com. Call me Ismail, ISMAIL. There's links to articles, and you can also sign up for further information there. And so we'll send you more information.
Thank you.